Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial we're going to take a look at setting a default auto-wiring type for an entire XML file. And notice I say XML file and not an entire application context, because an application context could read beans from multiple XML files. So what we're going to see here applies only to one XML file, and here we've only been using one XML file anyway. So all the stuff we said before about manual wiring and auto wiring, you can use that fine, but you can also set a default, which all this other stuff would then override if you use the other stuff that we've talked about. But you can set a default for this whole file. If we go to, well, let's take a look at what we've got here. We've got this logger class, and I've removed the constructor from the last tutorial, so we've just got properties to set. We've got two properties, and they both expect a log writer, and both of these beans, they implement that interface. But I've taken care to give them names, well actually IDs here, that match the properties that we want to set. So that means that I could set on this logger class auto wire by name, and it would work because these names of the beans match the properties. Now imagine that I've got lots and lots of beans in this container, in this XML file. Then I could set a default for the whole XML file, and if we go to the user interface view here and I select the root beans element, you see that you've got this default auto wire attribute you can set for the whole XML thingamajig, the whole XML file. And again, we've got by name, by type constructor, or no, or default. I guess the default is not to auto wire, and let's change this to by name, because I know that's going to work. And if I now run this application, it's working, and the reason is that I've got this default -auto wire attribute set to by name, and now by default it will try to wire everything up by name if it can, unless you specify something on specific beans to override that, and it's successfully wiring these into the name properties of this. Supposing we have another bean in here, and now let's see, how shall I do this? Now I want to show you an example of how we can have ambiguity here that we can then sort out by specifying particular beans that we want to choose for auto wiring into other beans. I think what I'll do is I'll go to logger here and I'll change the types of these properties back to what they actually are. So let's have a console writer here, and that goes there. And the type of this is file writer. And remember, these are just classes that I define myself, they're not standard classes. That looks good. And now we should be able to auto wire by type quite happily. So let's, yeah, because that's file writer, and whoa, yeah, we've got two file writers. Let's delete one of them. Okay, so yeah, we've got a console writer and a file writer, and we want to auto wire those by type into logger, and the type of the properties in logger are the right type, so that should work. Let's run that. Let's select app.java and click run, and there we go, it works. Now supposing we have more beans of the same type, let's just copy file writer again and paste it in here. I'll just do Control-Shift-F to format this, or Command-Shift-F on a Mac, and I'll call this, let's call it file writer 2 maybe, or I don't know, I could call it something different like log writer, I don't know, it doesn't matter, I'll just give it a different name. But the point is that there are two beans with this file writer type now, so if I run, and the default auto wire is to try to auto wire by type, so if I run this now, it's clearly not going to work. But what we can do is, because these have different names, console writer and file writer, I can say that I want those to be the auto wire candidates, and I could say that I don't care about this. So let's go to the beans view here, and you see there's this default -autowire -candidates attribute, and I can put in there a comma separated list of beans that I want to be considered for auto wiring into other beans. So let's put here console writer, taking care with the capitalization, and file writer, and that should work. So let's run it. And well, it didn't quite work. Let's take a look. So if I click on the error, we've not wired in the file writer here. And why is that? Let's go back to beans.xml here, and I've only got one called file writer, and we're auto wiring by type, and I've said that the candidates to be considered are these two. Let's just get rid of that space and see if that helps. And yes, that works. So, whoa, that's interesting. I didn't realize that, actually. If we run this, yeah, it doesn't like spaces in there. So you can use this default -autowire candidate to specify this comma separated list by ID of beans that you want to be considered for injecting into dependencies. Don't put any spaces in there, though, apparently. You can also use wildcards in here. So let's say that this is called something completely different. This log writer, let's call it squirrel. Okay, it's just a random word. Now we could say wire anything in that ends with writer. You can use an asterisk at the start or the beginning. So let's put an asterisk in here. Yeah, if I can remember how to type an asterisk on this keyboard. There we go. And I've erased my speech mark, an equals sign. There we go. And I'll delete this. So now we're saying anything that ends in writer, try to auto wire it. Try to use it to auto wire into other beans. And let's run this now. And again, we've got rid of the ambiguity because we're excluding this. So even though it's by type and this has the right type, it's not one of our default -autowire -candidates because they have to end in *writer. So that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding.